There was a show on TV that I really liked. It was called The Pretender. And it was this guy that was very smart as a kid. The government raised him in some secret building. And then when he becomes an adult, he escapes. But he's so smart that he can pretend to be anything he wants. So he can be a doctor, he can be a pilot, he can be the only thing he couldn't be, of course, was a pastor. But he could be anything else. Judas was a pretender. So let's read, and I'm going to start in, verse 64. Judas was definitely a pretender. So Jesus is talking. He says, "Yet there are some of you who do not believe." For Jesus had known from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray him. So you'll notice that Jesus says one of these disciples does not believe, okay? He went on to say, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled them." From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Jesus asked the 12 apostles. Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God." Then Jesus replied, "Have I not chosen you, the 12? Yet one of you is a devil." He meant Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, who, though one of the 12, was later to betray him. So let's just stop here. Judas is a pretender. And by the way, this is kind of on the side a little bit. Judas, that name Judas has kind of gone down through history. And I'm guessing very few people name their sons Judas. Just like I would think very few people would name their daughter. What in the Bible, what name do you think would be like, wow, you named your daughter that? Jezebel. Now, believe it or not, Social Security will reveal how many kids are named a name. And so the records are out for 2021, and there were 10 boys in the United States that were named Judas, and there were 15 girls that were named Jezebel. Now, before you get a totally negative attitude towards the name Judas, I better warn you. So you can keep John 6 for a second, but come to John chapter 12. John chapter 12. Does anyone know any other Judas? What's that? Yeah, all right. Chapter 12. Let's see, I'm going to start in chapter 14, excuse me. John chapter 14, verse 22. Then Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, "But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" One of the other disciples was also named Judas. There were two Judases, okay? So, I know, Judas of Iscariot was bad, but there was another disciple. So before you just trash that name, think to yourself, wait a second, one of the other disciples was Judas, but I'll even give you another example of a Judas in the Bible, one that you may not have thought about very much either, but here it is in Matthew chapter 13. Coming to his hometown, Jesus, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? They asked, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, who wrote the book of James in our Bible, Joseph named after his dad, Simon, and Judas? Jesus has a brother named Judas, and we know that Jesus' brothers became believers, were in the upper room on the day of Pentecost, and were great soul winners for the Lord. So be very careful when you're like, oh, Judas, one of the other apostles, and Jesus' own half-brother, who's in heaven, is also named Judas.